Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Agudath Israel Etz Ahayem Synagogue here in Montgomery, Alabama. I am Rabbi Scott Kramer. Welcome. We finally made it to Shabbat. We are praying tonight out of Siddur Lev Shalem. I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. It's been a long week here, and I'm just so glad to be here with you. We begin this evening with Shalom Aleichem on page 5. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim Kadosh Baruch Hu Boachem L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Baruchuni L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim Kadosh Baruch Hu Tzedchem L'Shalom Malachei Hashalom Malachei Elyon Mi Melech Malchei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Psalm 95, page 11. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Nariya, Nariya, Letzur Yishenu, Nekadma Fana B'toda. Nariya, Nariya, Letzur Yishenu, Bizmirot Nariya Lo. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Lechu neranena, lechu neranena, lechu neranena l'Adonai. Nariya, Nariya, Letzur Yishenu, Nekadma Fana B'toda. Nariya, Nariya, Letzur Yishenu, Bizmirot Nariya Lo. Please join me in the English. Let us go and sing to Adonai. Let us trumpet praise to our protector. Filled with thanks, let us greet God, raising our voice in song. Great is Adonai, a greater sovereign than all other deities. God's hands formed the earth's deep. Mountain crests, too, are God's work. The sea is God's, for God made it. Dry land was fashioned by God's hands. Come then, let us bow and kneel. Let us bend our knees in the presence of Adonai who formed us. For Adonai is our God, and we are God's flock, sheep in God's caring hands. If only you would listen today to God's voice and not become hard-hearted, like the people at Merivah, like that time at Massah in the desert, when your ancestors tried me and tested me, though they had seen what I had wrought. For 40 years I was troubled by that generation, and I said, these are a people whose hearts have gone astray. They do not know my way, so in anger I swore they would not enter my rest. Arba'im shanakut bedor, va'omar am to'eh levavhem, v'hem lo yad derachai, asher nishpati v'api, im yavaun el menuchati. Page 13, Psalm 96. Ashiru ladonai shir chadash, Shiru ladonai kol haaretz, Shiru ladonai baruchu shemo, Pasru meyom leyom Yeshuato, Sapru vagoyim kevodo, bechol ha'amim nifleotav, ki gadol Adonai, u'mehulal miyod, nora'u, Al ko Elohim lai lai lai, ki ko Elohe ha'amim elilim, v'Adonai shamayim ma'asa, had v'hadar le'efanav, oz v'tiferet b'mikdasho, havu l'Adonai mishpachot ha'amim, havu l'Adonai kavod v'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, seu mincha, Uvahu lechatzro davl haylai ishtachavu ladonai be'adchat kodesh chilu mipanav kol haaretz imrum vagoyim Adonai malach avtikum tevel balatimot yadin amim b'mei sharim yismechu hashamayim v'tagil haaretz Ayir amaya amu melo yalo sadai v'chol asher bo lai 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 aziranenu kol hatziyar lifnei Adonai kiva lishpot haaretz ishpot tevel b'tzedek v'yamim b'emunato yalai la lai la yai la 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 lai yai lai 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 yalai la 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 lai 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 yai lai 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 yai lai lai lai. We continue page, excuse me one second. We continue page 15 with Psalm 97. Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, the many distant lands rejoice. Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine, righteousness and justice secure God's thrones. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about. Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth blushes and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the Master of all the earth. The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory. Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is deemed supreme bow before God. Zion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult as you, Adonai, pass judgment. You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine. Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful. Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce the divine holy name. Or zaru la tzadik ul Yisrael simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hodu lezecher kadesho. Page 17, Psalm 98. Hamizmor shiru ladonai, shir chadash, Ki niflot asa Hoshia lo yemino Uzaroako Ochoadia Adonai Yeshuato Lena Goyim Gilad Sid Kato Zachar Chasta ve'emunato Levei Yisrael Rau Cholav Se'aretz Et Yeshuat Eloheinu Horiu Ladunai Kol Haaretz Pitzchum Ve'ranenu Ve'zameru Zamru Ladonai Bechinar Ve'kol Zimara Bechatzot Rod Ve'kol Shofar Horiu Lifnei HaMelech Adonai Yiramayam Umaloho Tevel Ve'yosh Ve'va נהרות ימחאו כף יחד הרים ירננו לפני אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק וימים במישרים ילאי ללאי 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 ילאי ללאי ללאי ילאי ללאי 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 ילאי ללאי 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 ילאי ללאי ללאי ילאי ללאי ללאי We continue page 19 with Psalm 99. Adonai reigns, nations tremble. The one enthroned amidst the cherubim makes the world quake. Adonai is great in Zion, above all nations. They shall acknowledge your name, saying, Great, all-inspiring Holy One. A sovereign strength lies in the love of justice, and you forge the paths of truth, judging Jacob righteously and justly. Exalt Adonai our God, bow down before God the Holy One, Moses and Aaron among God's priests, and Samuel among those who called upon the divine name, called to you and you answered them. You spoke to them from amidst the cloud. They kept your covenant and the law you gave them. You answered them, Adonai, our God. You were a forgiving God to them, even as you punished them for their transgressions. Exalt Adonai and our God and bow down at God's holy mountain, for Adonai, our God, is holy. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu lar kadisho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu, page 21, Psalm 29. Please rise if you are able. Mizmor leDavid, havu ladonai b'nei elim, havu ladonai kavod vos, havu ladonai kavod shemo, ishtachavu ladonai be'adrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim, Ela kavod hirim Adonai amayim rabim, kol Adonai ba koach, kol Adonai be'adar, kol Adonai shover arazim, vayshaber Adonai et alzei alvanon, vayarkidem kemo egel, Lebanon v'Sirion kemo ven rehemim, Kol Adonai chotzev lavot eish, Kol Adonai yachil midbar, Yachil Adonai midbar kadesh, Kol Adonai yecholeo ayalot, Vayechesop yaharod, Uvehechalo kulo homer kavod, Adonai lamabul yashav, Yeshev Adonai melech leolam, Adonai ouz li'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. You may be seated. We continue on page 23 with Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nikabela, Lecha Dodi likrat Kala b'nei Shabbat nikabela, Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Ishmi'anu elam yuchad, Adonai echad, Ushamo echad, L'shemo tiferet, V'litila lecha Dodi likrat Kala b'nei Shabbat nikabela, Likrat Shabbat Lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor abiracha, merosh miked dimnesucha, sov maase b'machshvat chila, lecha Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela, mikdash melech ir melucha, kumitzi mitocha hafecha, ravlach chevet, B'yemek habacha v'yachamo alaichem la, Lecha Dodi likrat kala P'nei Shabbat Nikabila. Hinari me'afar kumi, livshei vigdei tifartecha mi, ayad ben yishai, beit alachmi, korva el nafshi ge, yalla lecha, dodi likrat, kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila, hitoreri, Kiva ore kumi ori ashir daberi kivod Adonai alayich nigla lecha dodi leikrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila lecha dodi leikrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila lo tevoshi velo tikami ma tishtochachi umatemi bach yechasu ani yami venivnata iralti la lecha dodi leikrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila v'hayulim shisa shoesayich v'rachaku mivalayich yasis alayich Elohayich kim chatan al kala lechadodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila yamin usmo tifron ziviet Adonai taritzi ayadish ben parti venismecha venagila lekadodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila. We rise and we face towards the west to greet the Shabbat bride. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam besimcha uvetzala toch emunei am segula boi chala lechadodi lekrat kala p'nei Shabbat nikabila. You may be seated. We continue, page 27, Psalm 92. A psalm, the song of the day of Shabbat. It is good to thank you, Adonai, and sing to your name most high, to proclaim your love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. Finger the lute, pluck the harp, let the sound of the lyre rise up. You gladden me with your deeds, Adonai, and I shall sing of your handiwork. How wonderful are your works, Adonai, how subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand. The fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms, only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful. Proclaiming Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no flaw. Tzadik tamar yifrach ki erez balvanon yiske shetulim bevet Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim verananim yeyu lehagid ki yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlatabo. Page 29, Psalm 93. Adonai is sovereign, robed in splendor, girded in strength. The earth stands firm, not to be dislodged. From earliest time you were enthroned, you are eternal. The rivers rise up, Adonai. The rivers raise up their roar. The rivers raise up their waves. Above the roar of the vast sea and the majestic breakers of the ocean, Adonai stands supreme in the heavens. In your house, beautiful in its holiness, your testimonies endure, Adonai, for all time. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to everyone. I see Stephanie and Lane are in from Milwaukee. I guess you missed South Bend by a bit. Of course, Stephanie and Lane Blond and I moved to this past week. They moved to South Bend, and we wish them well. I'm glad you are joining us this evening. I'm glad all of you are joining us this evening. The talk I'm going to give tonight, I actually gave last night at Fraser Methodist Church. This, what I'm going to talk about will explain what this is about. It was an interesting evening. It was an interesting program. And I thought since most of the Jewish community probably didn't attend or know about this, I thought I would give a wider audience to what I talked about. Back in May of this year, I was invited to speak at an event by Aaron Free at Lakeview Baptist Church in Auburn. I had never spoken at a Southern Baptist church and had never had a meaningful conversation with a Southern Baptist minister. I was reticent and nervous. I talked with my colleague, Rabbi Steve Silberman, at Ahavas Chesed Synagogue in Mobile, who was also asked to speak at a parallel event put on by Israel Team Advocates in Mobile. Both of us were a little unsure about what we would talk about, since we would be speaking to a mostly non-Jewish evangelical Christian audience, and not sure if we would be welcome or understood. I stressed over what I was going to say. 1 hour before the event, I decided that I did not like my talk, ripped it up, and started over. During the 1 hour drive to Auburn, I was more than a little unsure about how that evening was going to go and was prepared for disaster. Still unsure, I got up on the dais of this magnificent church with 400 to 500 people in attendance and still had no idea what I was going to say. I looked around, saw Pastor Al Jackson, and all these unknown faces looking at me, wanting me to inspire them. I took a breath, said something to test my voice in the microphone, and then it came to me. I decided to tell a story of an experience I had in Israel at, of all places, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. This is when I was in rabbinical school. My third year was in Israel. My message at the last minute was, what is holiness and where is it to be found? Is it inherent in the place, or does it reside in people? I decided that holiness resides in people who bestow it, and exclaimed that I was in the presence of holiness, that was made up of the people in that and this room. When I was finished, I had no idea what the reaction would be. Pastor Al came up to me and said that he wanted to get together and get to know me better. He had tears in his eyes. I guess what I said made an impression, so I asked if I could hug him as we departed. I could see this was an unusual request, but he acceded to this strange rabbi's request for a non-cursory relationship. Pastor Al and I met for lunch in Auburn, where we both jumped in with both feet, talking about our lives in and out of the pulpit, and not shying away from questions of theology, religion, church doctrine, and how Jews were perceived and how Christians were perceived by Jews. We held nothing back. I had some very deep questions for him and wanted to know the answers from his heart. We did not agree on doctrine or theology, but then our discussion revolved around our congregations with its many issues and problems, and eventually to our personal lives, including our health and what our family lives were like. And then we scheduled another lunch, at which time he brought his son-in-law, a Methodist pastor, and again we delved into some pretty deep topics. And then he got COVID and I got COVID. We found ourselves calling each other and praying for each other to get better and recover from this scourge that is plaguing the world. I felt like I had made a friend who really cared about me. This past Tuesday, we got together for breakfast in Auburn. He made a blessing over the food and had tears in his eyes. I told him last night that he cries a lot. Actually, so do I. I did not ask him what the tears were about, but I would surmise that he was thankful to God for this relationship that has blossomed and grown and made us both better pastors, better friends, and better people. I have been thinking about these walls that Pastor Al and I have broken down and searched for something in the Tanakh, the Jewish Bible, to help me understand it more and provide a better foundation on removing other barriers that kept us all apart. I finally found it in Numbers 22, which I will describe briefly. The Israelites are in the midst of their 40-year wandering in the desert, searching for the promised land. At some point, these 4 million souls enter someone else's land who perceived a threat from these ex-slaves. King Balak decides to engage a non-Jewish prophet, Balaam, to curse the Israelites and rid himself of this troublesome people. Balak takes Balaam to a height overlooking the entire Israelite people and asks him to curse all those he sees. Balaam, being a prophet of God, cannot curse the Israelites, but instead blesses them. Balak was furious and took Balaam to a second viewpoint where he saw only half of the Israelites. Again, the curse turns into a blessing. A third time, Balak has Balaam view only a sliver of the Israelites, and a third time, the curse turns into a blessing. Balak finally realizes what the problem is. Balaam cannot curse people he has seen, who he perceives, who he knows. So Balak takes him to a place where none of the Israelites are in view. Again, the curse turns into a blessing. This gives me a better understanding of human nature and a mantra that I carry around with me always. It is hard to hate someone you know, you see, or perceive. I'll say that again. It is hard to hate someone you know. Once you know someone, you cannot unknow them. So it is more difficult to find hate in your heart. That is why I have this desire to get to know more and more people, Christians, Muslims, and people of all faiths. In an empty heart, one that is looking for meaning of all of our travails in life, it is human nature to want to find something or someone to blame for our misfortune. An empty heart is quickly filled with feelings of some unknown other that would do us harm and explain why bad things are happening to us. My mantra tells me to instead fill that empty heart with love and understanding. How do we find love and understanding? How about sitting down with each other and having a heart-to-heart? Leave the animosity, what we think we might know about someone we really don't know at all, and remember that the first humans were created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. All of us have godliness in our hearts and souls. Why don't we begin today to come together and really get to know each other? Together we can conquer that which keeps us apart. I invite you all into my heart. And I will end with one of my favorite quotes from The Little Prince. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Ma'ariv, page 39a. Please rise if you are able for the Baruch Hu, the call to worship. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, whose word brings the evening dusk, whose wisdom opens the gates of dawn, whose understanding changes the day's divisions, whose will sets the succession of seasons and arranges the stars in their places in the sky, who creates day and night, who rolls light before darkness and darkness from light, who makes day pass into night, who distinguishes day from night. Adonai Tzevaot is your name, living and ever-present God. May your rule be with us forever and ever. Baruch atah Adonai, who brings each evening's dusk. U'mahavir yom u'mevi laila, mavdil ben yom u'vein laila, Adonai Tzevaot Shemo, El chai v'kayam tamidim lo chaleinu l'olam v'oed, Baruch atah Adonai Hamariv Haravim, page 40. Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael amchavta, Torah u'mitzvot חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו משכבנו וקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד. וכי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגה יומם ולילה ויעבדך תשים ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשכבך וקומך וקשרתם מאוד על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך והיה אם שמוע תשמעו את מצותי אשר אנוכי מצותי. ויאמר אדוני משה לאמור דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם ויעשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורתם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם. ולא תטו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem Emet, page 43a. This is our enduring affirmation binding on us that Adonai is our God, and there is none other, and we, Israel, are God's people. God is our sovereign, redeeming us from earthly rulers, delivering us from the hand of all tyrants, bringing judgment upon our oppressors, and just retribution upon all our mortal enemies, performing wonders beyond understanding and marvels beyond all reckoning. God places us among the living, not allowing our steps to falter, and leads us past the false altars of our enemies, exalting us above all those who hate us. Adonai avenged us with miracles before Pharaoh, offered signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. God brought Israel from its midst to lasting freedom and led them through the divided waters of the Sea of Reeds. As their pursuers and enemies drowned in the depths, God's children beheld the power of the divine. They praised and acknowledged God's name. Page 44. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלהם משה ובני ישראל הנשירה בשמחה רבה ויאמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדור בקודש נורא תהילות אוסף אלה Malchutecha ruvenecha b'kiyam lifnei Moshe, Zeli anu v'yameru, Adonai imloch le'olam voed, V'nehemar kifadadai et Yaakov, Ugalad mi chazak mimenu, Baruch et Adonai, Ka'al Yisrael. Page 45. Hashkiveinu Adonai Eloheinu. Ushmotetenu vein l'chaim ushalom yatavi adolam ufrosalenu skat shlemecha Baruch et Adonai haboretzu kat shalom aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. We rise, page 46, for Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barito la'am. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barito la'am. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barito la'am. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barito la'am. Uvayom shvi shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash shavat vayinafash. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledoretam barito la'am. We rise for the silent Amidah for Friday night, pages 47 through 52. We rise as the ark is open, page 56, for Elena. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלו. עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו הווה זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד כי נקבל לברינו. גגדו בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו Echad. You may be seated. This week we will observe yard sites for Eliezer Weinstock, Reuben Alter Aronov, Pauline Karstens, Fanny Schwartzman, Lena Ruttenberg, Esther S. Fleischman, Thelma Kallick, Joe Capilouto, Reuben Hannon, Karen Herman, Richard Jaffe, Isaac Berman, Regina Cohen, Ralph M. Franco, Marjorie G. Herman, Lillian Ravinsky, Regina Schulwolf, Rose Belitsky, Ellen Miller Sturman, and Regina Labato. Those observing yard site and those who mourn, please rise. Page 58, and join me for the Kaddish tone, the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shmei Rabbah, v'yama divrach yirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon, v'chayedachol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'maru amen, yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei maya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei d'kudisha barichu le'lam min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran v'yoma v'yimaru amen yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen oseh shalom b'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael Ve'imaru, amen. May be seated. Thank you for joining us this evening. Shabbat shalom to everyone. I will be back tomorrow morning for Shabbat morning services at 9:30 a.m. Tomorrow evening we will end Shabbat together with Havdalah via Zoom. This week we have a really special program. We are going to be entertained with a parody on the opening song to Hamilton by a student cantor, Carl Sayers from Seattle. And it's going to be phenomenal. You do not want to miss this. If you're going to miss a Havdalah, don't miss this one. And if those who are on our master list have already gotten the link, if you are a little intrigued, go ahead and send me an email at rabbi@agudathmontgomery.com, and I will send you the link so you can join us tomorrow evening. Oh. Thank you, Spencer. Apparently, I've been given a date for our next wedding, which will be Spencer and Kristen on August 22nd. I've been reminded or told that this is 1 year from today I'm going to be doing a wedding. Oh, I can't wait. And for my favorite two people. Cannot wait. Thank you. I forgot what else I was going to say. Anyway, I know. October 22nd, 2022. Very good. We will, and sorry, I just got totally flustered with that for some reason. We will conclude our service tonight with Adon Olam, page 211. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefso kol Azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'yacharei kichlota kol Livado yimloch nara Adon Olam v'hu haya v'hu oveh v'hu yeh b'tifara Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefso kol Azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'hu echad v'yein sheni laham shelo lahachbira Adon Olam b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo oz v'misra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefso kol Azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzorchev li b'yetzara Adon Olam v'hu nisi umanosli minat kosi b'yom mikra Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefso kol Azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam biyado afkid ruchi b'yetishan v'yayira Adon Olam v'maruchi geviyati Adon Oli v'lo ira Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol Yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chefso kol Azay melech shemo nikra Adon Olam. Shabbat Shalom. I'm so grateful to have two of my children here, both Justin and Adina. I'm giving them a shout out. Whenever I give a thumbs up, one of them shows up, and the other thumb means the other one shows up. So, Shabbat Shalom to everyone.